In a world obsessed with the pursuit of personal glory and the recognition of individual achievements, humility has often been relegated to the status of an outdated virtue. Yet it is precisely at this moment, when the cacophony of self-assertion seems deafening, that humility must emerge as our guiding star. The true nature of humility is not to diminish the self, nor to erase one's worth. Rather, it is to see oneself with clarity, to understand one's limits, and to recognize one's dependence on others and the greater good. At the heart of humility lies wisdom. A humble person, far from being weak or servile, is one who has an honest understanding of their position in the grand scheme of things. It is a person who understands that no achievement is solely their own, but the product of many factors, the work of others, the timing of events, and often a good deal of luck. Humility calls us to step back and recognize the interconnections between all things and all people, where no one person holds dominion over all others. In acknowledging this, we develop the capacity for greater understanding and thus greater wisdom. The current state of our world highlights the urgent need for humility. We live in a time where individualism is lauded, where success is measured by personal wealth, status, and influence. Yet these values, when taken to extremes, lead not to a flourishing society, but to division, envy, and an ever-growing sense of disconnection from one another. In this environment, humility can feel like a weakness, and even those who may profess its virtues often do so in ways that contradict their actions. Humility is not simply about speaking in modest terms or downplaying one's achievements. It is about living with the awareness that our actions, large and small, affect those around us. Consider the challenges we face as a global community: the widening chasm between rich and poor, the environmental crises that threaten the very foundation of life as we know it, the political instability that erodes trust in institutions. In all these matters, the inability to embrace humility has led to policies, actions, and attitudes that prioritize self-interest over common good. The absence of humility has fueled the belief that one's personal success is the measure of value, regardless of the cost to others. But true progress, whether social, political, or environmental, requires that we look beyond ourselves, see our shared humanity, and act for the common good. Humility is the antidote to the destructive forces of pride and selfishness that have, throughout history, led to conflict, exploitation, and degradation. By embracing humility, we can rebuild the trust that has been fractured in our relationships with one another and the world around us. Humility teaches us to listen, to acknowledge the validity of perspectives other than our own, and to approach challenges with a spirit of collaboration rather than competition. In times of adversity, humility is not about surrendering to powerlessness, but about recognizing the limits of what we alone can do. It is an invitation to work together, to cooperate in pursuit of a greater goal. The humility to acknowledge our collective responsibility, whether in addressing climate change, reducing inequality, or fostering peace, enables us to forge alliances across divides, to share resources and knowledge, and to act in concert for the benefit of all. The world, now more than ever, needs humility. It needs leaders who understand that their power is not an end in itself, but a means to serve the greater good. It needs citizens who recognize that the well-being of their neighbors, both near and far, is inseparable from their own. It needs individuals who are willing to look beyond their own ambitions and see the needs of others with compassion and a willingness to act. Humility does not ask us to deny our worth or to diminish our efforts, but to see them in their proper context. It asks us to remember that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. It invites us to grow, not in isolation, but in harmony with others. The power of humility is its capacity to unite, to heal, and to restore. If we embrace it now, we can begin to build a world that is more just, more compassionate, and ultimately more human. Humility is often misunderstood in modern discourse, particularly in a world that frequently celebrates self-assertion and individual achievement. When we think of humility, we may conjure images of meekness or self-effacement, as if it were a form of passive submission or a refusal to acknowledge one's own abilities and worth. However, true humility is neither self-denial nor self-depreciation. Rather, it is the recognition of one's rightful place in the grand scheme of things. Humility requires an honest assessment of who we are, acknowledging both our strengths and our limitations, while understanding that our existence and success are not entirely of our own making. It is a deeper, more profound awareness that fosters wisdom, compassion, and a sense of interconnection with others. At its core, humility is the ability to see ourselves clearly, without the distortion of arrogance or excessive pride. It is not about undervaluing oneself, but about refusing to overvalue oneself. A humble person does not consider themselves superior to others, but instead understands that every individual has intrinsic value and contributes to the larger whole. In recognizing this, they do not diminish their own worth, rather, they elevate the worth of others. Humility, therefore, does not ask us to deny our achievements or ignore our talents. It simply requires us to place them in the context of a greater purpose, acknowledging that success is often shaped by a combination of factors beyond our control, including the support and contributions of others, the circumstances in which we find ourselves, and the timing of events. True humility allows for personal growth and self-improvement, grounded in the understanding that no one person has all the answers. Humility invites us to be open to learning, to be receptive to new ideas and perspectives, and to accept that we can always grow. A humble person is not threatened by the success or knowledge of others, but rather sees it as an opportunity to learn and evolve. This openness fosters wisdom, as it encourages us to seek knowledge from sources beyond our own experience. It also prevents us from becoming stagnant, as humility pushes us to continually reassess and refine our understanding of the world and our role within it. Humility also encompasses the ability to listen and to empathize with others. In a society that often prioritizes individual expression and self-promotion, the act of truly listening to others can be a profound exercise in humility. To listen attentively is to acknowledge that others' experiences and perspectives are equally valuable and worthy of consideration. Humility, therefore, is not simply an internal posture, but also a relational one, where we recognize the dignity of others and show respect for their views, even when they differ from our own. This kind of humility is essential for building meaningful, trusting relationships and for creating a society where cooperation and mutual respect can flourish. Another critical aspect of humility is its capacity to guide ethical behavior. When we are humble, we are less likely to exploit others for personal gain, as we recognize that we are no more deserving of resources or success than anyone else. Humility aligns us with justice and fairness, encouraging us to act in ways that benefit not only ourselves but also those around us. It promotes a sense of accountability, as it reminds us that our actions have consequences, and that we are responsible for the impact we have on others. In this sense, humility is intimately connected to the virtues of kindness, generosity, and social responsibility. By fostering humility, we cultivate a deeper sense of empathy and moral integrity, which in turn helps to build a more just and compassionate society. In contrast to arrogance, which often leads to conflict and division, humility fosters unity. Arrogance, driven by an inflated sense of self-importance, leads individuals to believe that they are above others, that their opinions are the only ones that matter, and that they are entitled to special treatment. This mindset breeds resentment and discord, as it fails to recognize the dignity and value of others. Humility, on the other hand, fosters an attitude of service and cooperation. It encourages us to seek common ground with others, to work together for the common good, and to contribute to causes greater than ourselves. In doing so, humility has the power to heal divisions and promote collective well-being. Humility allows us to embrace our imperfections without shame. It teaches us that failure and mistake-making are part of the human experience, and that growth often emerges from the most difficult moments. A humble person does not fear failure or seek to hide their shortcomings. Rather, they acknowledge them with grace and use them as opportunities to learn. This acceptance of imperfection enables us to live more authentically, freeing us from the constant pressure to present ourselves as flawless or invulnerable. It encourages us to approach life with a sense of curiosity, knowing that the pursuit of excellence is a lifelong journey, not a destination. True humility also invites us to reflect on our place in the world and the role of others in shaping our lives. We are not isolated beings, rather we are part of an intricate web of relationships, both human and non-human. Our actions, however small, have an impact on the world around us. Humility helps us recognize that we are not masters of the universe, but rather stewards of the resources and opportunities we have been given. It calls us to take responsibility for the care of the earth, the well-being of others, and the preservation of the common good. Through humility, we understand that our lives are interconnected with those of others, and that we have a collective responsibility to ensure that all are treated with dignity and respect. Humility is a virtue that empowers us to become better versions of ourselves. It frees us from the tyranny of ego and allows us to grow into more compassionate, thoughtful, and ethical individuals. By cultivating humility, we not only elevate our own character, but also contribute to the well-being of others and the greater good. It is through humility that we can build relationships based on trust, create communities of cooperation, and work towards a more just and harmonious world. In today's society, humility seems increasingly rare, especially in the face of pervasive cultural trends that emphasize self-promotion, individualism, and the pursuit of personal gain. The erosion of humility in modern life is not just a passing trend, but a deep-seated shift in values, one that has been amplified by technological advances, media influences, and changing societal norms. The modern emphasis on personal success often comes at the expense of communal values, cooperation, and the well-being of others. This shift can be seen in various aspects of our culture, from the rise of social media influencers to the glorification of wealth and celebrity. The quest for individual recognition and status has led to a profound disregard for the interconnectedness of human existence and the shared responsibility we have toward one another. One of the most noticeable manifestations of this erosion of humility is the increasing prevalence of self-centeredness. People today are encouraged to focus on themselves, to assert their importance, and to celebrate their uniqueness. Social media platforms, for example, are built on the idea of self-presentation, where individuals curate their lives, sometimes distorting reality to create an idealized version of themselves. This creates a culture of comparison where individuals constantly measure their worth against others, leading to an inflated sense of self-importance. The pressure to appear perfect and to be seen as successful has made humility seem less desirable, and instead, qualities like confidence, assertiveness, and self-promotion have become the markers of success. This hyper-focus on the self can lead to a dangerous sense of entitlement. In a culture that prizes individual achievement, people may begin to believe that they deserve special treatment simply because they have attained a certain level of success. This sense of entitlement can manifest in many ways, from the expectation of immediate gratification to a lack of consideration for the needs of others. The rise of consumerism, where people are constantly told to seek more, have more, and achieve more, reinforces this attitude. Humility, which invites us to recognize our dependence on others and our shared humanity, is often drowned out by the loud, insistent message that we should be able to secure what we want on our own, regardless of the cost. The erosion of humility is also evident in the way that authority and expertise are often undermined in contemporary society. In an age of information overload, where everyone has access to a platform and the ability to voice their opinions, the value of expertise is often diminished. Experts in various fields, whether in science, politics, or the arts, are frequently questioned, not necessarily because of a legitimate challenge to their work, but because people have become accustomed to the idea that their opinions, no matter how ill-informed, are just as valid as those who have spent years studying a particular subject. This disregard for expertise is fueled by a culture of instant gratification and the notion that everyone has an equal stake in every conversation, regardless of their experience or qualifications. The willingness to defer to others, a key component of humility, is replaced by the assumption that personal opinion holds as much weight as professional knowledge, leading to fragmentation of collective wisdom and a reluctance to learn from those with more experience. This diminishing regard for humility also plays a significant role in the political and social divisions that characterize much of the modern world. In politics, for example, the rise of populist movements and the increasingly polarized nature of public discourse can be traced to a failure of humility. Political leaders often appeal to their base by emphasizing their superiority over others, using rhetoric that divides rather than unites. They present themselves as champions of the people, fighting against elites or outsiders, and assert that their perspective is the only valid one. This kind of divisive leadership fosters a culture of arrogance, where compromise is seen as weakness and empathy as unnecessary. Humility, which encourages us to listen to others, consider different viewpoints, and work toward common solutions, is increasingly rare in political spheres, where winning and asserting one's dominance often take precedence over building consensus or fostering understanding. Another area where the erosion of humility is evident is in the corporate world, where the pursuit of profit often supersedes ethical considerations. In a climate where success is often measured in terms of monetary gain, power, and influence, humility can be viewed as a liability. The competitive, results-driven mentality that pervades many industries encourages individuals to push their own agendas, sometimes at the expense of others. The focus on personal achievement and status often means that collaboration and teamwork, which require a degree of humility and selflessness, are undervalued. Leaders in business are frequently portrayed as those who rise above others, exhibiting confidence and an unyielding drive for success. The culture of constant competition and the relentless pursuit of personal success diminish the value of humility, leading to environments where selfishness and individualism flourish and cooperation takes a back seat. But the increasing erosion of humility also contributes to the deterioration of community bonds. In a society where the individual is often placed at the center, the notion of collective responsibility and mutual aid becomes less prioritized. Humility calls for an acknowledgement of our shared humanity and the recognition that we are interdependent. However, the prevailing cultural narratives often promote the idea that success is a solitary endeavor, achieved through personal effort alone. This mindset erodes the social fabric, leading to greater isolation and a weakened sense of communal responsibility. As people become more focused on their individual pursuits, they may lose sight of the collective good, resulting in social fragmentation and a lack of empathy for the struggles of others. The erosion of humility in modern society has far-reaching consequences, affecting not only our personal relationships and individual well-being, but also the broader health of society. As individuals become more self-centered, more entitled, and less willing to listen to others, we see the fragmentation of community and the rise of social and political divisions. The lack of humility leads to a breakdown in cooperation, a disregard for expertise, and a weakening of the collective spirit that binds us together. In this environment, the cultivation of humility becomes more urgent than ever, as it offers a path toward healing, understanding, and the restoration of social cohesion. Humility, rather than being an outdated virtue, is the antidote to many of the challenges we face today. The need for humility has never been more critical than in the face of the complex and interconnected global challenges we face today. From environmental degradation to political instability, from rising inequality to the erosion of social trust, the modern world is grappling with problems that no single individual or nation can solve alone. The issues we encounter are too vast, too intricate, and too deeply rooted in systems of power and privilege to be resolved through selfishness or pride. In this context, humility is not just a personal virtue, it is a collective necessity. It is a virtue that calls for cooperation, self-awareness, and a deep understanding of our shared responsibility toward one another and the planet. One of the most pressing issues of our time is climate change, a problem that knows no national boundaries and demands global cooperation. The destruction of natural ecosystems, the depletion of resources, and the rise in global temperatures all pose existential threats to future generations. Addressing these challenges requires a level of humility that recognizes the limits of human control and the need to work together for the common good. Humility in the face of climate change involves acknowledging that we are not masters of nature, but stewards of the earth, entrusted with its care for the benefit of all. It requires a recognition that human activity is at the root of environmental destruction, and that we must change our behaviors, our consumption patterns, and our relationship with the natural world. Humility teaches us that our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the entire planet, and it calls us to act responsibly and with foresight to protect the planet's future. Equally pressing is the issue of global inequality, which continues to widen despite advances in technology and economic growth. In a world where a small percentage of people control a disproportionate amount of wealth and resources, the gap between the rich and poor continues to grow, exacerbating social tensions and undermining the prospects for sustainable development. The persistence of poverty and the lack of access to basic needs such as clean water, healthcare, and education reflect a profound lack of humility in our treatment of others. Humility calls us to recognize that our privilege is not a result of inherent superiority, but rather a product of historical and social circumstances that have shaped our opportunities. By acknowledging this, we can move toward greater empathy and solidarity with those who are less fortunate, understanding that the well-being of all is inextricably linked to the well-being of each. Humility, in this context, involves recognizing that no one should be left behind, and that the prosperity of a few cannot come at the expense of the many. The rise of political polarization around the world further underscores the need for humility in addressing global challenges. In many countries, political discourse has become increasingly hostile, with opposing factions unwilling to listen to one another or find common ground. This divisiveness threatens the stability of democratic institutions and makes it more difficult to address pressing issues such as healthcare, education, and social justice. Humility in politics involves the ability to listen to acknowledge that other people, even those with differing views, have valuable perspectives. It requires leaders and citizens alike to be willing to engage in dialogue, to seek compromise, and to put the common good above personal or party interests. In a world where political leaders often engage in rhetoric that promotes division and superiority, humility offers an alternative, a way of governing and engaging with others that prioritizes collaboration, understanding, and the recognition that no one has all the answers. By embracing humility, we can create a political culture where empathy, respect, and dialogue are the foundations of decision-making. The global refugee crisis is another pressing issue that requires humility to address effectively. Millions of people are displaced from their homes due to war, persecution, and environmental disasters. The plight of refugees calls for a response grounded in compassion, understanding, and a recognition of our shared humanity. Humility, in this context, involves acknowledging that refugees are not simply other, they are individuals with the same rights and dignity as anyone else. It requires us to set aside the temptation to judge or stigmatize and instead approach the crisis with a spirit of solidarity and care. Humility challenges us to recognize that the suffering of others is not a distant concern, but one that affects us all. By embracing a humble attitude, we can create policies that prioritize human dignity, protect the rights of refugees, and foster a culture of inclusion rather than exclusion. Humility is crucial in the way we approach technological advancement and its impact on society. As technology continues to evolve at an unprecedented pace, we are faced with ethical dilemmas about the use of artificial intelligence, data privacy, biotechnology, and other emerging fields. Humility calls for an acknowledgement of our limited understanding of the long-term consequences of these innovations. It requires us to exercise caution and foresight, recognizing that our technological power must be tempered by responsibility and ethical consideration. Humility in the context of technology involves the recognition that technological progress should serve the greater good, rather than advancing the interests of a few at the expense of many. It encourages us to question whether our innovations are truly benefiting society as a whole and to prioritize ethical principles over profit or expediency. In this way, humility helps ensure that technological advancements contribute to a more just and equitable world. In every aspect of our global challenges, humility offers the framework for collaboration, ethical decision-making, and long-term thinking. It requires us to set aside individual interests, to acknowledge the limitations of our knowledge and power, and to work together in pursuit of a shared goal. Whether addressing climate change, combating inequality, healing political divisions, or responding to humanitarian crises, humility fosters a mindset of cooperation and interdependence. It calls for the recognition that the challenges we face cannot be solved by any one person, nation, or organization, but require collective action and mutual respect. Humility, therefore, is not merely a personal virtue, it is an essential quality for navigating the complexities of the modern world and for building a future that is sustainable, just, and compassionate.